stays after mine. And
Nice.
I was gonna see if we could have Meg or something, just.
No, she's.
She was gonna have it at the gym. or something.
Okay, we're live. Good evening. It is March 20th and this is the Finance Committee. Can we start with roll call?
Yes, Mr. Grumney,
Yeah, here.
Mr. Neff,
Here.
Mrs. Strayer,
Yes, here.
Mr. Capel is absent at the moment. Mayor St. John. Here. Mrs. Cooper,
Here.
Mr. Martin.
Here.
6 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And then it looks like we have some minutes to approve from the February 21st meeting. So moved. Okay, motion. Second?
Second.
Okay, we'll give Molly the second. Get you in the paperwork. Yeah.
All right, ready? Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mrs. Strayer,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
6 yeas. Motion approved.
All right, thanks, Sarah. We have a lot of bullet points under the new and finished business tonight, so we'll jump right into it. It looks like the first thing we're going to hit is Rita address update. I know it was brought up last month about some confusion on the new builds being included in the Rita zone. So Dana, I'm assuming you have the update on that.
Could I
Yeah.
interrupt you before we move that far along? I just realized, looking at this again, Ms. Dreyer wasn't at the meeting last month. So to have her be the one to second the minutes probably doesn't do justice.
We actually were, we
We
had
talked about
Dick
that last-
provide an
Mhm.
opinion. I think it was at our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. He had done quite a bit of research. And believe it or not, for the past 150 years, we've been wrong. And folks who weren't at the meeting can actually vote to approve.
Really? But she made a motion to approve.
She seconded it.
Second.
I've got her down as second and
I understand that, but okay, I don't mind if that's okay, but that's been a practice that we've had in the past, that if you weren't at the meeting, you approving the minutes doesn't make sense, so, yeah.
It's true. I forgot that was at Planning and Zoning Commission. Vic did offer to write like a basic brief on that if we
Mhm.
wanted to just secure it, but
We can redo it.
I think we're good.
Yeah, he didn't make any distinguishing remark that you couldn't do that, so I think we're fine.
Yeah. If we find out we're wrong, we'll reapprove next week. Is that okay?
there you go.
Yeah.
I second.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move forward with Rita then.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
There's a memo in your Finance Committee packet on page 5, which states the nature of the conversation that the mayor and I had with 2 Rita representatives back at the end of February. The issue was surrounding Rita's tax portal not capturing every current address in Sunbury. And the conversation focused around how Rita gets that information. The city is ultimately responsible for providing that information and updating it as necessary. Rita also grabs information from the state tax database and from when residents file the Form 75 when new residents move in. The basic the result of the conversation was that I had provided them an updated listing, which included every address to date, including some new addresses that are currently being they're currently platted or very recently platted and known by the county. And I'm also going to provide them with quarterly updates, at least quarterly, and with a focus on year end so that this issue doesn't happen again. I did get confirmation from Ms. Denny at Rita that she did take my information and put it into the database, so it all should be in there currently now. Any questions on that process? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. I've run into that myself when I lived up in Cleveland about not being notified I was in a Rita district till I got a billing at the end of the year and a nasty letter. So, yeah, it was. So thank you for taking care of that.
And if I could also add, it's a comment, I get phone calls often about hey, I didn't know I was supposed to pay this Rita tax and now I have a penalty. I did vamp up our website a little bit to add some additional language on there so that it's a little more helpful for new residents. So if you happen to go on our website and take a look at that, let me know what you think. And if you think there's anything I should add, please feel free to let me know.
Will we notify realtors in the area about Rita so they know to tell their customers about it? That might be a good thing for them to have it at a closing when they buy a house.
Yeah.
Some
That's a great idea. We do provide the postcard when a new resident moves in, which provides information such as utilities and who they're supposed to call to set up certain accounts. And there is I think a QR code on there for them to file with Rita, the Form 75.
Yeah, so maybe just a little bit more about the postcard, because I don't know that we've had much of a conversation about this. Mr. Grumney had raised the point maybe 6-9 months ago. Is there a way we could welcome new residents and direct them to these important pieces of information that you need to know about living in the city? One of them being to sign up with Rita, but also all the benefits of living in the city of Sunbury as well, the parks and what have you. So each month we are, so we do have a postcard. Basically, it's got the mayor welcoming them on behalf of city council to the city. It then directs them to this page, the new resident page on our website. And what we do is it's based upon any new sewer accounts that are set up during that month. So maybe we're not getting everybody, but we should be getting everybody that way. And there is some reconciliation that happens between Delco and our sewer utility staff to make sure that if they're signing up for a water account, that we're following up to make sure they're signing up for a sewer account as well. So yeah, that is now out there, and I think it will help facilitate.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that was Mr. Grumney's.
No, well,
suggestion, so-
Great
But,
idea.
no, thanks. It's just good that we now have two ways to catch the Rita thing, then through the individual homeowner, through the postcard, and then they know what you're doing quarterly / annually. So that's good. Okay, any other questions about Ms. Rita?
How do
Okay,
you notify people that are getting apartments? Not people that aren't buying a house, but moving into an apartment?
That is a great question. I don't think we have a process for apartments, do we?
That'd
Yeah,
be something worth looking at.
yeah, it depends upon the billing process, again, whether it's individually metered or there's a master meter.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a meter behind the master meter. So I don't know. I'll ask our utility billing clerk a little bit more about that, how that's working.
Well, this,
When they file their taxes, they have to pay, they should pay Rita, or they have to register to pay Rita.
but that's the point. Sometimes they don't know that and they don't file that tax.
They'll find them, I would imagine, if it's an apartment, because it'll go to where they lived before.
Jack, that's a great question.
Well, this update, I guess the programs that payroll departments look up as well, because that's always been a problem and one that every neighbor has always complained about is payroll departments. They don't take out any type of deductions for Rita because when they call in, it shows that address in a non-tax zone. So I know it did that for years over in Sunbury Meadows, and it was always a fight to try to get payroll deductions. And then I'm assuming it's going to happen here in Price Ponds as well.
I think what you're talking about is the Finder through the state of Ohio. There's a website called the Finder that the state of Ohio puts out that you can enter an address, and it's supposed to tell you what municipality that address is located in, also which school district it's located in, and if there's a tax associated with that municipality and school district. So that is not always accurate.
Right.
Rita and that website don't communicate. They're not related. So I don't know that my updates with Rita would help with the problem that you just mentioned. Furthermore, if an employer is only required to withhold city tax for the workers that are in the city in which they work. So for example, Hitachi, they are only required by law to withhold Sunbury income tax because they're in Sunbury. Now, if a resident who lives in Columbus works at Hitachi, the Columbus city tax is not required to be withheld by Hitachi. Hitachi can, as a courtesy, it's called a courtesy withholding, but they're not required to. So that's an example of how that could be an issue for citizens who live in Sunbury and work in a different city. Their municipal tax for where they live is not being withheld because it's not a requirement by their employer.
Correct. Yeah, but like for me, I'm taxed from my house as my home address, and many of the sales reps are in the area. So a lot of them, like literally, it was a multiple conversations with payroll, like, no, just go ahead, and I actually ended up referring to an old city council member, like, look at his actual payroll deductions. That's how it's supposed to be. The only way I could do that was knowing how his taxes were deducted, but nobody else in the neighborhood at that time could pull that off with their payroll. We just happened to work for the same company. So the complaint on Rita was mainly because nobody was having taxes withheld during the year. So that's the one thing, because they were at that time over in Berkshire Township. At least the finder had them in Berkshire Township, although they were in Sunbury. So that was always the problem with Rita was, oh, I'm getting hit with this huge bill. But I mean, I tried to give the information appropriately, but no one was falling on deaf ears for most payroll departments. And as these new neighborhoods continue to happen with the annexations, then we may want to get on that, or we'll have a lot of people who are getting hit with Rita right at the end of the year, not knowing, thinking they
Right,
turned it into their payroll department because they did, but it just wasn't withholding any taxes.
right. Well, with the quarterly updates, giving the information to Rita on the new addresses, new home ranges, that should, I would think, solve that issue.
But it doesn't-
So it's still up to the employer, though, to know where to go to find that information.
So is there a way to update this finder?
I have no control over the finder. It's all administered through the state.
All right, we good? All right, on something much more fun, HB 33 updates.
House Bill 33 was signed into law last July, and it included some updates and changes to all municipalities' tax ordinance. So this is a required update that we need to make to our tax ordinance, and you'll see that it's in the council packet for this evening. I will just briefly explain some of the changes. I'm not going to go into details, but if you have questions, I'll be happy to go into more details. It's some of the adjustments to the tax ordinance include publication requirements for JEDs or JEDZs, minors being exempt from municipal income tax. There's some existing language corrections. Net profit extension filings are extended by 1 month. Notices are prohibited while taxpayers are on an extension, and it caps the late filing penalty. So some good changes for residents, benefiting the residents in most of these situations. So just some minor changes, but once this passes through council, we'll get the codified ordinances updated, and our website will reflect the correct ordinance for tax.
Very good. Okay. Okay, next, I don't know if Daryl, you're gonna handle the Big Walnut Intermediate School Trail, the trail connecting Price Ponds and the intermediate school?
I am.
Okay.
So, in the packet page 12, there is an illustration that shows a proposed route for a multi-use trail on the intermediate school grounds that would connect on the southern end of this sketch into Price Ponds and ultimately connect over to Rolling Hills. So we have been working with the school district about trying to get this path installed. They're very interested in having it happen as well. It provides safe access for a number of children who would be accessing it again from those two subdivisions. And so the reason that I've got it in front of you today is this: we had appropriated funding in the budget bill for the construction. What I've received from from CT Consultants is the task order to basically do the design, do some survey work, some design work, and then construction management. So I'd like to bring this to the council for consideration at its next meeting, but I wanted to at least be briefing the finance committee on what we would be bringing forward. The school district, like I said, has agreed to be a partner with us on this. It's on our interest. It's in their interest as well. The total cost is estimated to be $158,000, and the arrangement is that we would share the total cost with the school. So $79,000, at least at this point. Once we receive the bids, then we'll have the actual costs associated with that. In the packet, CT Consultants has indicated it'll be about a 10-month project from the time that we sign off on the task order, to the time that it's open. So assuming that we act at the next council meeting, this should be available depending upon weather, first quarter of next year for children to use. So the thought is, are there questions regarding what we're asking CT to do? What the project is, where the school district is, any of that.
I'm no engineer and I'm about ready to prove that, but the trail, I'm always curious something like that, even when roads are, is there a reason why it's not just a straight line versus the bend? Because I feel like kids will go, I don't want to walk all the way down that turn. I'm just going to cut across the grass anyways.
Yes. So we worked closely with the school district in terms of the alignment. There's a field down in this area, play field down in this area. There's also, they've got a discus area down here as well, which they may abandon that. And there's fencing, and there's also a playground as well that come into play. So all of those are kind of impacting the alignment itself. But like I said, I think probably the biggest piece is they just the school district wanted to leave that open fields area, for kids to be able to play on long term. So in the note, CT Consultants has indicated that they'll probably round these corners a little bit more than what you see here. Just makes it easier on a bicycle, or even if you're walking, to do that. So as they go through the survey and the detailed design work, it may move a little bit, but this is the high level concept.
So this land right here, south of that line, is that you couldn't make the trail go just straight up and down like north and south, or whatever?
Another good question. So he's looking at the southern portion of the design.
And then make a
That's
bend.
somebody's backyard.
Oh, is that what it
There's a
is?
trail connection that's not shown on this. though.
Already right there. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the other critical piece. We have a trail that extends basically to the northern property line of the subdivision, the southern property line there. So
There were
that's where
5
they would
options
connect.
presented to the school district,
Yeah.
including going all the way around these fields. That was like $400,000. One going all the way to Weatherby Drive on the south end, that was like 300,000. And then there was a shortest path, which was just straight up to the parking lot.
Yeah.
And the intent is to allow kids safe passage to school. Well, this is the car drop off
Right,
circle in
that's
the morning,
Pretty busy.
and there's really no walking path.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Makes sense then.
Yeah, it should be a great addition.
Yeah.
So, and like I
very
said,
nice.
we did budget for this as a part of the budgeting process, but the task order would require council approval given the size of that. So, all right, so we'll be back at council next meeting for action on that.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Daryl. Okay, the next big sign, we have fiber and some advisory services about that fiber.
All right, so I'm going to keep this one. You may recall, I think most of you will recall, that we had engaged Deep Fiber Strategies to help us study the fiber assets that exist in the city, and to help us develop a strategic plan moving forward so that we could ensure fiber to every address in the city long term. So we do have that plan, and kind of key to that plan is the notion that the city would create a loop or a ring or a backbone. I mean, it's used lots of different terms around the city at some point. And to do that, though, the recommendation is that the city would partner with other providers, with other jurisdictions, perhaps, to be able to make this happen. So after we received that initial report back from Deep Fiber, staff went out and began to have individual conversations with some municipalities around the area, just to kind of talk to them about what we were doing, what the recommendation said, and kind of, how we might be able to partner with them or engage them, or what were they doing, so we could kind of learn how they implemented their fiber strategy. Long story short, what I would say is, I think what we've learned is that we really do need to have some advisory services to assist the city as providers approach us and as we consider, whatever strategic partners we want to engage. I think I've mentioned to this group and others, we have had 3 fiber providers that are showing some interest in the city of Sunbury right now. All of them would like to gain access to our limited right of way. And so engaging Deep Fiber to provide some advisory services, I think, is key at this time, so that we don't make any long-term any decisions that I think we would regret long-term, but also use this opportunity with these providers to basically begin to leverage what it is we want, which is this backbone built. So I asked Deep Fiber if they would give me a proposal on to provide those services. They did. And essentially, it is a time and or a fee for service contract. So there's no set amount in terms of a minimum payment each month. It really will be based upon how often we engage Deep Fiber to provide services. So on packet page 14, they've provided what the fee charges would be for the principal, any analysts that might be involved, or any administrative support services. So we have included in our budget amendment, which is in front of council now, I think $25,000 to pay for these services. So we're building out the appropriation. What we really just need to do is do the engagement. So again, not asking for action this evening, but just indicating that I'd like to bring this in front of council for action at the next meeting, and just wanted to get any feedback from the group prior to that.
This consultation, is this all done at long distance, or do they come in and actually physically on the ground, or is it all through?
They're local.
They're local. Okay.
Yeah, they're local, so they'll be able to do that when we need them.
Okay.
They do list a series of
Oh, yeah.
proposed responsibilities, but again, they also say they will follow our lead.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate that all of these issues or suggestions that they've raised are things that we would pursue.
Right.
Again, we'll kind of drive and direct them moving forward.
Gotcha. Thank you. Any questions about the fiber? All right.
All right,
Thank you,
great.
Daryl.
Thank you.
I think you're probably still up to bat. If I-
One more time.
Yeah,
One more.
yeah. Building facilities project, contingency appropriations.
All right, so beginning on packet page 16, what I've, and this is an item we do have on the council agenda for this evening for some consideration, and that is when we had approved the appropriations for the building, the renovations project, so that's the building, the police building, the municipal building. What we did is we appropriated in the budget the exact amount of money for the Sutherland contract to do the construction. So what I've included in the packet is their original bid, which you can see total 3.3, just a little over $3.3 million. And that's the amount that we had appropriated. But what I also included in the packet is that when we were going through the planning process and getting estimates from the architect, they had built in a 10% contingency beyond whatever the construction costs would be to cover any unexpected issues that might result or that might occur as a result of the project itself. So for example, well, let me just finish that thought and just say, so we had and during the project budget, we had anticipated the 10% contingency. We just did not carry that forward into our 2024 appropriation. So that's what we're asking this evening to add to the budget amendment ordinance that you have in front of you, is basically to amend it, to add this contingency so that then these unexpected costs that are necessary in order to move the project forward, keep it on schedule, that we have a funding source to be able to help make that happen. We're still, below the, at least initially, council had authorized borrowing up to $4 million. This is not borrowing. Again, this will fund out of existing resources. So that's kind of the high level. The other thing I wanted to say is that at this point, we're halfway through the project. The types of things that are showing up under the contingency would be once they took the ceilings out of all the buildings, what they realized is that the insulation was sitting on top of the ceilings. And so now we have no insulation in the building. And so you got to re-insulate it. So that's again, a contingency cost that we need to put in there. If we don't, the inspectors won't approve it anyway, because the envelope won't retain the heat and cool like it needs to. Another thing that happened in the municipal building and also over in the police department is when they removed the ceilings and the walls, they realized that they needed to reinforce. There's a structural element in the municipal building that needed to be reinforced to help hold the roof up. Obviously, we want that. And two, the building inspector won't approve it without it. So again, that's another contingency that, again, it's absolutely essential that we have the resources to be able to do it and stay on budget. And the final thing I will say that's kind of been a little bit of a sticking point, and that has to do with the mechanicals. Again, when the ceilings came out, I think the architects did not quite understand how limited the space was in the basement in the municipal building, and the fact that we have some supporting beams running east-west in the police building. They just did not anticipate that it was built that way. And so as a result, it changed the way that they have to deliver the heating and cooling system throughout the building. So they had to rework that a little bit. And as a result, it affected the mechanicals, including the furnace over at the police building. So rather than use the old furnace like we were going to, we really needed to get an updated furnace. So again, those are the types of things that fall into the contingency. And so, like I said, we're just asking that we pull forward what we had planned for and put it in the budget so that we can successfully complete the project. So,
Well done.
all right.
Is that on our agenda tonight?
So the way that it'll appear on the agenda this evening is you'll do the second reading on the budget ordinance. We'll just ask to amend it. It's redlined with this amendment in it. So ask that you amend it, add the 300,000, then leave it there. And then there'll be one more reading on the ordinance at the next meeting.
So we'll do the reading with the amendment included in it.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Bream was asking that you move to amend, to insert.
Yeah.
So.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not an emergency.
No, we're fine. Like I said, we'll have the third reading of the budget amendment in 2 weeks. So I think we're good.
Very good.
All
All
right.
right. Thank
Great,
you for
thank
that
you.
update. Thank you. Okay, Dana, I think back to you about a recommended write-off or a reconciliation variance.
Yes. If you would turn to page 25 of your packet, I have a little illustration here that I'd like to walk through. But before I walk through it, just to give you a little bit of background, every month I reconcile what goes through the bank and what goes through our books. And every month I try to get that to the penny, and I'm pretty successful with that month to month. If I'm not, I dig into it and find out why, and then I eventually figure it out. So it's a success every month. Back in March of 2023, I noticed this variance for $16,215.53. This was something that I was unable to identify. I had gone through everything every detail, couldn't find it. So I left it there. April, May, every month thereafter, I'm left with the exact same amount. So once that occurs, that tells me that this variance has stemmed from a time prior to March of 2023. So, and since it is still hanging out there now, as you can see on page 25 of your packet, I have a little snapshot of my reconciliations. On the left-hand side is March of 2023. And on the right-hand side is January of this year. So basically through the reconciliation, I start with all the bank balances. I subtract the outstanding checks. I compare the book balance, which is from our system, and I come up with a variance. Then the variance is identified through going through the bank statements and the postings. As you can see, there's lots of different items in there that make up that variance, and then, or those reconciling items. And then I compare those reconciling items to the adjusted book balance, and then I get what I'm off. So if you look at the March column and compare that with the January column, If I write off that $16,250.53, I'm left with the zero variance. And that's really where I want to be. That's the goal, to get our books in line with our bank account, less outstanding checks and reconciling items. So the reason I didn't move on this earlier, I wanted to make sure it played out a few months so that I was certain that that variance was what it was and that I couldn't identify it. And now that we're in the new year, it's still hanging out there. I feel confident that it is an expense item that was missed in the past. So I would like to give a recommendation that we write this off, and if Finance Committee is okay with it, I'll prepare an ordinance to be read at a council meeting where we can approve that write-off.
So was the first time it showed up March of 2023 then?
Yes, more or less. It showed up probably earlier than that, but I wasn't exactly certain if that was the exact amount or if I was still missing something. So having some subsequent months with that same variance falling out every time.
Yeah.
That's when I became confident that it is what it is. Most likely it is associated with either some sewer payment variances that were never posted or an expense that was withdrawn from our bank account that wasn't posted. So I can't say what it is. I can't say what fund it's associated with or what account. I just know that it exists.
You're just looking for a head nod from us to say, let's get that on the agenda.
Well, I'm gonna put it on the agenda because I think it needs to happen.
Yeah.
If you're okay with it,
Yeah.
head nods,
Yeah.
yes, would be good. And then I'll go ahead and get that, I'll write up an ordinance to get that official.
So the bank balances went down, but there was no corresponding transaction.
That's correct.
Have we ever had a precedent for something like 16,000 is a pretty big write-off? We've never done that I'm aware of. You know, last year we did do a write-off, but it was like in the $600 range, I think. Isn't that right? We had an offset. Am I wrong?
I
Is this
don't
the first
remember.
time we've done a write-off?
Yes. As far as a precedent goes, I don't know that there is one established here at Sunbury. I did have this experience at a previous position where we had to write off an expense similar, it was a similar amount. And I think I believe it came from an expense that was drafted from the bank that just never got posted. And that could happen if a finance director isn't looking at every single transaction, which, as you can imagine, is very tedious. But if every single transaction isn't confirmed and verified, then this can happen and something can get missed.
You can't search by that amount, right? Okay.
I've tried.
Have you reached out to the bank to have them help with this? I mean, it's a pretty specific number. So, I mean, are you thinking it's one transaction, or I guess my kind of
No.
fear is it's more than one transaction?
Most likely it's more than one transaction.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking about. Like, is there something systemic that happened prior to? And you had just started, what, 5 months before that,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
it was around the time of a transition.
And it could have existed long before
I know you
then.
didn't say that, but that's where I was kind of going with this is.
Yeah. It could have happened back in 2010. I don't know. I can't, it's not feasible to go back in time and look at every transaction.
That's fair. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And it looks like we have two more things on the agenda, year-to-date comparison reports and the bank to book reconciliation.
Yes.
Check register.
So starting in page 22 of your packet. Every month, as most of you are aware, I like to provide the year-to-date variance report on revenues and expenses. And I'm happy to go through kind of how this is laid out for the benefit of Ms. Dreyer. I can do that with you one-on-one, or if it would benefit the committee, I'm happy to give a little explanation at this time. Any idea?
What would committee like? I know we've had this before, so I don't know if doing it offline maybe might be best, and that way we can, unless anyone has any questions. So, okay.
It's a lot of numbers, so just wanted to go through the revenues first of all. So looking at the revenues for the year, they're listed there in the estimated revenue column. And what we've collected year to date is listed next to that. Since this is as of February month end, we're looking at 2 months out of 12. So we should be around 16.67% in collections. However, as you know, not all revenue is collected uniformly throughout the year, so variances are expected. These variances are in terms of where we should be at this point in the year, just based on 2 months out of 12. So if you look at some of the things I want to call out, interest income is always a big one, and it's no different this year either. We've collected $164,000 just in the general fund for interest income. That's 75% of our annual budget. So we are going to surpass that by quite a bit again. Just want to point out, we are paying more in interest rates for our loans. So I look at the interest income as a nice little offset to income that we're getting. And on the other hand, we're having to pay more in interest fees. So it offsets it a little bit there. One other thing I want to bring your attention to on the revenues is on page 24 in the cemetery fund. The Drugan Fund, it's the 4th line from the top. We estimated 68,000, and this estimate is based on historical trends and what we've collected in the past. So far, year to date, we've collected 53,000, and that was from a one-time check, additional payment from Huntington Bank. It was a bonus, so to speak. They said they had extra money in the funds. The fund had performed well, so they had sent us extra. So that was a nice little surprise.
That doesn't happen too often.
Also down,
The 68 is supposed to be the whole year's worth of revenue.
correct,
And
I
in
do-
March, we're up to 57.
53, yes, and I do still
53.
expect to receive that 68 or around 68,000 in addition to the 53.
Wow.
Because the 68,000 is based on an annual payment that we receive from that fund.
Right.
And that 53,000 bonus was not the annual payment, it was in addition to.
The Drugan Fund is set up like a trust, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Also on the revenues in the state grant line, a little bit below the Drugan Fund, you can see that we have budgeted 0 in revenues for the year, but we did post almost a $200,000 income. This was an advance from the Ohio Water Development Authority on the loan that will be paid directly to CT Consultants. So it's an in and it will be an out in March. So that's not true revenue right there. Before I move on to expenses, any questions on revenue? Okay, expenses start on page 26. Again, comparing the annual appropriation with the year-to-date expenses compared to 16.67% throughout the year. Everything that's highlighted in yellow is where we have exceeded that 16.67 by 10%. So everything that's highlighted in yellow there is has a comment on it that you can read. Many of the benefits lines will be over budget right now, primarily due to HSA funding. We pay HSA funds in the beginning of the year and in July. So obviously not evenly throughout the year. A big chunk of that is paid in January, which is why it's so high right now. Also, uniform allowances are paid at the beginning of the year, which is what's driving that increase. Let's see what else. The RETA retainer down there towards the bottom of page 26. We are exceeding that right now. We're slightly over budget. That's primarily due to the fact that we had a large distribution come in January, and the payment, the RETA retainer is a percentage of what they distribute to us. So it's directly related with when our income is high, this retainer fee will be higher also. We did, on page 28, I just point out that in the street fund, capital construction, we budgeted 500,000 for the year. Right now, that's showing us fully spent. This $500,000 payment consists of a payment to Strasser Paving for the 2023 street contract. That did not get paid last year. So it was budgeted in 23, but didn't actually hit our bank until this year in 2024. So that may require an adjustment later on to the appropriations, depending on when we get, when we're having to pay other street construction funds. Nothing else really to point out that is of note. Just everything that's in yellow, feel free to take a look at the comments. And even if it's not highlighted in yellow, feel free to ask me any questions about any of these expenses. I do enjoy doing this practice. It's a good routine for me to get into because I can identify where, if certain expenses are being placed in a category where they shouldn't be, it gives me ample time to correct it before it gets too late in the year. So I really enjoy doing this program, this practice.
Can I ask a question just for clarification? On page 28, what's the difference between the Capitol Street at I should have glasses on, 335,000, and then the Capitol Street that you just mentioned, the 500,000?
So they're just in different funds, but they're both related to capital for street projects. It's just the different funds that they're coming from. Coincidentally, that 500,000 payment plus the $335,000 payment, I believe that combined was the payment we made to Strasser. I split it up from those two funds.
Okay. So if that was a payment for last year, will that be retro applied then to 23? And so we still have those funds available for this year, or we're just paying it this year, so it's coming out of this year?
It has to come out of this year's budget.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what that means is that those funds that were appropriated in 2023 for this project didn't get spent, so they rolled forward, they carried
Okay, so
over.
the funds roll forward, the expense doesn't go back.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I would just add, it's not from lack of effort. We did have our consultant DLZ. They were pushing hard on Strasser to get the bill in before the end of the calendar year, and they did not. So,
Gotcha. Thank you.
And then I've also given you the complete check report for the month of February for you to review. And if you have any questions on what we're spending, this is everything that we've spent, whether it's been paid through ACH or via check. It's all here on these pages so that you can take a look at them. And our bank to book reconciliation is also listed here on the front page. And my breakout of the income tax is there for the past 5 years. We're netting higher than we did last year in comparison. So we're on the up and up.
Very
I believe
good.
that's all I have.
Any questions for Ms. Steffen? Awesome. Well, I think that, Daryl, did you have anything else that you need to add? So, okay. Well, I think that brings us to a conclusion then tonight. So if there are no other questions, can I get a motion to
Make a motion to adjourn.
adjourn? Okay, thank you. Second. Murray, second. Thank you.
all right, Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Strayer.
Yes.
6 yeas, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
A lot of work.
When-